Has anyone ever told you yet today how much they love you? In a previous life, I was an art teacher in the South Bronx. I grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I studied philosophy at Creighton, and I hadn't planned on becoming a teacher. But I had worked with children all over the world, and I had learned that they were all deserving of the same love and had the same dignity. So when an opportunity to join a Teaching Fellows program in the South Bronx came up, I took it. On the first day of school, I realized just how unprepared I was when the first group of 20 children were dropped off in front of me. Being so unprepared, I did the best impression of a strict teacher that I could. Sit down, don't run, don't talk, raise your hands. Every day verged on chaos. A lot of days plunged fully into it, and it was the most challenging year of my life. It was also the most rewarding, and I loved my students. And then one day, I walked back into my classroom, and a student had left a note for me. Have you ever gotten a note like that? How would that make you feel? I was heartbroken. Then I began to spiral. I ran to the principal's office. I found the director of operations, and I said, "There's been vandalism in my classroom, and we got to figure it out. We need an investigation." The director of operations laughed in my face and said, "There will be no investigation. But I have a question for you. What's the matter with you? How come an anonymous 8-year-old can hurt your feelings like this? Doesn't anybody love you?" So I went back to my classroom and began to reflect. If I felt like I loved my students so much, but that wasn't the reality they were experiencing, it was my responsibility to change it. I enrolled in a master's program to earn my Master's of Science in Education, realizing that I should probably have some of the technical skills required to be the best teacher that I wanted to be. The other thing I did was return to my philosophy studies. The ancient Greeks defined the highest form of love as agape. It is the effective willing of the good of the other, regardless of their actions. How do you bring that concept into a classroom? How do I do that in practice? I thought, can I just tell them I love them? Is that weird, though? Are you allowed to tell other people's kids how much you love them? But I figured I didn't know really what else to do. I told them every day, "I love you." And then I began to learn some really intentional teaching strategies, like 2x10s, where you spend 2 minutes every day for 10 days. Establishing a healthy foundation for relationship. Or John Gottman's 5-to-1 ratio. It started off with marriages, but it has spilled out into boardrooms and classrooms. This is a 5-to-1 ratio. That means that for every negative or corrective action or interaction, you have to have at least 5 positive interactions or connections in order to maintain a healthy relationship. So armed with these strategies, my classroom began to transform. I went from rules, authority, control, to high expectations, shared responsibility, and unconditional love. How do you know if what you're trying to do is going to work? You look at the outcomes. So I looked. And two outcomes began to emerge. The first outcome was the level of excellence for my students. I decided to do a unit in self-portraits inspired by illuminated letters. Students would use the first letter of their name and then fill the background with things that interested them and use their favorite colors in order to represent themselves through these letters. Now, I had a student in my class, Z, who was a self-identified great artist. And in 4th grade, being a self-identified great artist means you do not need to bother with whatever I am asking you to do, because you already know, okay? And so I was really excited. I saw him working in a sketchbook. I thought, Z, you're doing it. This is great. And when I went over, realized, no, he's not doing it. I said, Z, what is this? He said, I'm done. It's great. See ya. I said, this is the work of a great artist? Yeah. I said, okay. Oh, okay. Do me a favor, though, real quick. Would you please go get me, I need 2 sketchbooks. I need X and S. Bring them over here for me, please. So now, Z, can you tell me who is the great artist here? Because, And Z looked at the work, and he looked at me, and I saw his expression change as he realized that the work in front of him was not a reflection of who he thought he was as a great artist. He looked at me and said, "Can I start again?" Yeah, you can start again. A year prior to that, he may have ripped up the page, stormed out of the room, or decided to stop trying. But in this environment, making a mistake doesn't lose my love or respect. And no matter how good your art is, you can't earn my love. You already have it. So this work is not about earning anything from me, my approval. It's about how he sees himself, and if that is good enough for him. The second way that I saw my classroom transform was in relationships. There were these 2 kids, probably 9 and 10 years old. S is a little girl, J is a little boy, and they fought every day. They could not stay away from each other. And arguing and teasing became bickering, and most days ended in some kind of physical violence. And so one day, I walked into my classroom, and I locked eyes with Jay. His jaw was clenched. His fists were clenched. And he sat rigid in his chair with his eyes brimming with tears. Because S was standing so close to him, holding out a paintbrush so close to his face, not touching him. I looked at him, I said, "Jay, don't move. You're okay. You're safe. I love you. You do not have to do anything." And after 30 seconds, that felt like a lot more, S threw the paintbrush on a table and walked out of the room. Jay started crying, and I gave him a huge hug, and I said, "I'm so proud of you." Sometimes love looks like being able to feel safe and in control of yourself, no matter what other people do. No matter how close they get, you do not have to react. And if you did that once, you can do it again. Shortly after that, I was promoted out of the classroom to begin teaching new fellows. And I began much the same way I began my first year of teaching. Here are the rules. Do as I say. We're going to all get along really great. Trust me. I already did this. And at the end of the year, I got some feedback. One of the fellows said, "You talk a lot about unconditional love for your students. Doesn't that apply to us? It doesn't seem like it. Aren't we also worthy of love?" I read that feedback and thought, no, you crazy? You signed up for this. These kids, no. I do not have to do that for you. That's your responsibility. And then started to think, are grown-ups really so different from children? 2023 Pew Research Survey tells us that fewer than half of US adults aged 18 to 29 feel any meaningful connection with their community. That same survey found that fewer than half of all United States residents feel like they can trust their neighbors. And yet, the 2025 World Happiness Report tells us that pro-social behaviors, agape, love, are some of the biggest influences on mental health, physical health, and overall community flourishing. So in my most recent position with a nonprofit, I was tasked with designing an approach to early education from birth to school-age care. Before I got started, I went into the boardroom and said, we need to talk about values in order to build our systems of work. And I think the most important value we should share is love. What would you do if I walked into your boardroom and said, let's talk about love? If I walked into your classroom or city hall and said, you know what, we need love here. That room was awkward. They said, can we say that? How do you measure it? What does that mean? Can we say belonging or safety or respect? Wouldn't that be easier, better, safer? I said, we have to say love. It promises the highest outcomes for teachers and students. It's gotta be love, because love is not the feeling. It means that every decision that we will make is made for the benefit of others and their outcomes so they can thrive. When we adopted love as a value, we saw our systems transform just like they had in my classrooms. And our parent satisfaction surveys reached 99% of overall satisfaction out of over 300 families. What I'm trying to impress upon you tonight is nothing new. It is ancient, and we feel it in our bones. The need to love and be loved. But love is more than a feeling. It requires action. So I invite you to consider on your drive home tonight, whatever you're doing after this, to think about tomorrow and think about what it looks like in your boardroom, your office, your classroom, or on your farm. What does it look like if you begin to act out of love for the benefit of others, regardless of what they do for you? And in case nobody has told you yet today how much they love you, I love you.